Welcome to the story at a luxury restaurant. A millionaire sees his pregnant ex-wife while out to dinner with her new girlfriend. But he is very shocked. The chance encounter leads to unexpected revelations that will leave you speechless. As the evening begins, the millionaire is enjoying a quiet dinner with his new partner, soaking in the ambiance of a luxurious restaurant. Little does he know, the night is about to take a dramatic turn. Suddenly, he spots his ex-wife across the room, visibly pregnant. The sight stirs a whirlwind of memories and emotions, prompting an internal struggle between his past and present. The millionaire's girlfriend quickly senses the tension in the air. She becomes an unwilling participant in an unfolding drama that tests the strength of their bond. Meanwhile, the ex-wife's presence and her condition raise questions about their past and the implications for their future. This emotional encounter opens a dialogue about forgiveness, responsibility, and the possibility of second chances. Inform us if you are enthusiastic about this narrative. If you are, press 1 if you found the video to be enjoyable. If this is not the case, press 0. Your comments are a great source of motivation for me to collect more stories that are uplifting and meaningful.
The golden glow of the city lights reflected off the sleek glass windows of the limousine as it pulled up to Amaretto, the newest and most exclusive restaurant in town. Lincoln Davis adjusted his cufflinks, the subtle flash of his platinum watch catching the soft interior light. Beside him, Ruth sat poised and elegant, her sequin dress sparkling with every turn of her wrist. She was everything the evening demanded, polished, glamorous, and exuding the same air of affluence that surrounded him. "Do you think they'll have truffle risotto?" Ruth asked, her tone casual but tinged with excitement. "I've been craving it all week." Lincoln smiled and nodded. "If they don't, I'll make sure they do. Tonight's about celebrating. Nothing's off the table." The restaurant was the perfect backdrop for their evening, a modern masterpiece with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the skyline. The maitre d' greeted them with a wide smile, ushering them toward a table draped in crisp white linens. The room hummed with quiet sophistication, every detail meticulously arranged to exude exclusivity. Ruth leaned in as they sat. "This place is incredible. You always know how to pick them." Lincoln allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Tonight wasn't just about the product launch. It was about reminding himself, and everyone else, that he was at the top of his game. Success, after all, was best celebrated with the right company and an impeccable setting. As they scanned the menus, Lincoln caught a glimpse of a server moving toward their table. He barely registered her at first, just another uniformed staff member weaving through the polished crowd, but something about her gait pulled his attention. When she stepped closer, his breath caught. Harper. Her hair, once so familiar, was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her uniform, a black blouse and apron, was far removed from the elegant dresses she used to wear. But it was her face, framed by the same soft features he once traced with his fingers, that sent his thoughts tumbling. She looked tired, her eyes shadowed by long days and restless nights, but there was a glow about her. It took him a moment to realize why. She was pregnant. Lincoln's heart lurched, a cascade of emotions hitting him all at once: shock, guilt, and a sharp pang of something he couldn't quite name. The woman who had once been his world was now standing before him, carrying a life he knew nothing about. "Good evening," Harper said, her voice calm and professional. "Can I get you started with some drinks?" Ruth, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension crackling between them, smiled brightly. "I'll have a glass of your best Chardonnay." "Lincoln?" Lincoln struggled to find his voice, his mind racing to reconcile the woman in front of him with the memories he tried so hard to bury. Finally, he managed. "Water for now." "Sparkling." Harper nodded, her expression giving nothing away, and jotted the orders down on her notepad. For a fleeting moment, her eyes met his, and he thought he saw a flicker of something: resentment? Sadness? Before she quickly looked away. "I'll be right back," she said, turning on her heel and disappearing into the sea of diners. Lincoln stared after her, his appetite suddenly gone. He could still hear her voice, softer now, tangled with the echoes of their past late-night talks, whispered dreams, and arguments that had grown louder with each passing year. He had told himself that their divorce was inevitable, that their lives were moving in different directions. Yet seeing her now, with a baby on the way, he couldn't help but feel he had missed something crucial. Ruth's voice broke through his thoughts. "Earth to Lincoln?" He blinked, realizing she was looking at him expectantly. "Sorry. What were you saying?" "I was asking if you're okay. You've been staring off into space since we got here." She tilted her head, her expression laced with concern. "Something wrong?" "No," he said too quickly, forcing a smile. "Just thinking about work. It's been a long week." Ruth's eyes narrowed, but she let it go, returning her attention to the menu. Lincoln, however, couldn't stop the images flooding his mind, Harper smiling at him across their old kitchen table, laughing as they danced in the rain during their honeymoon, her tears the night they finally admitted they couldn't make it work. When Harper returned with their drinks, she placed them on the table with practiced efficiency. "Are you ready to order?" Ruth rattled off her choice, but Lincoln hesitated. His eyes flicked to Harper's face, searching for a sign, a cue, anything to anchor him in this moment. Finally, he gave his order, his voice quieter than usual. As Harper scribbled it down, Ruth leaned forward, her voice warm but curious. "You look familiar. Have we met before?" For the first time that evening, Harper hesitated. She glanced at Lincoln, a subtle question in her eyes, before shaking her head. "I don't think so. I just started working here a few months ago." Lincoln felt his throat tighten. The idea of Harper, a woman who once managed marketing campaigns for global brands, waiting tables was almost too much to process. Yet she carried herself with the same quiet dignity he remembered, her head held high despite the circumstances. When she walked away again, Ruth turned to him, her brow furrowed. "Is it just me, or was that a little weird?" Lincoln forced a laugh. "You're imagining things. Let's focus on tonight, okay?" But even as he said the words, he knew they were hollow. His thoughts kept drifting back to Harper, the baby, the tired lines around her eyes, and the unspoken stories hidden behind her composed exterior. He couldn't help but wonder, how had she ended up here? And why did seeing her now, after all these years, feel like a second chance he hadn't asked for but desperately needed? Dinner stretched on, but Lincoln barely registered the conversation. Ruth talked about their upcoming trip to the Maldives and the latest art installation she wanted for their penthouse. But Lincoln's mind was elsewhere. Across the room, Harper moved between tables, her smile polite but distant. He couldn't shake the image of her standing in their old apartment, telling him she couldn't do it anymore, that his work would always come first. The evening ended with dessert, Ruth's favorite crème brûlée, but by the time they left the restaurant, Lincoln's celebration felt hollow. As they stepped into the cool night air, Ruth slipped her arm through his, smiling up at him. "That was perfect." "Thank you." Lincoln nodded absently, his gaze flicking back toward the restaurant's glowing entrance. Inside, Harper was somewhere, going about her night, unaware of the storm she had stirred within him. As the car pulled away, Lincoln leaned back in his seat, staring out at the city lights. The life he had built felt solid, unshakable. Yet tonight, for the first time in years, he felt the faintest cracks forming in its foundation. And in those cracks he saw Harper, tired but resilient, pregnant and strong, reminding him of everything he had once had, and everything he might have lost. The city blurred past the limousine window, streaks of light and shadow painting the glass. Lincoln sat in silence, his fingers tapping an absent rhythm on the armrest. Ruth scrolled through her phone beside him, humming softly to herself. The air inside the car felt thick, the celebratory mood that had started the evening now a distant memory. "You're quiet," Ruth said suddenly, breaking the silence. She looked up from her screen, her brow furrowing as she studied him. "Is something bothering you? You've been off since dinner." Lincoln hesitated, caught off guard. "No, just tired, I think. It's been a big week." Ruth didn't look convinced, her gaze lingering on him a moment longer. "Well, try to relax. We're going to the Maldives in a few days. You deserve a break after everything you've accomplished." He forced a smile and nodded, but his thoughts were miles away, back in that restaurant. More specifically, back with Harper. Her face, her presence, her pregnancy, they churned in his mind like a storm he couldn't escape. The weight of the encounter lingered, pulling him into memories he hadn't revisited in years. Lincoln hadn't always been the man he was now. There was a time when ambition wasn't the singular focus of his life, when late nights at the office and early mornings on conference calls didn't define his existence. Harper had been there during those early years, long before he had become the CEO of Davis Industries, back when they were both dreaming about a future that felt limitless. They had met at a small marketing firm where Harper had been a rising star, her creativity and charisma lighting up every room she entered. Lincoln had been drawn to her immediately, her passion, her laugh, the way she could make even the dullest meetings feel electric. Their connection had been undeniable, and it wasn't long before they were inseparable. In the beginning, everything had felt easy. They were partners in every sense of the word, building their lives together with a shared sense of purpose. Harper had supported Lincoln's aspirations, even when his work began to take up more of his time. She believed in him, in his vision, and he had promised her that all the sacrifices they were making would be worth it. But as Davis Industries grew, so did the distance between them. Lincoln threw himself into his work with a single-minded determination, convinced that success would justify everything, the late nights, the missed dinners, the vacations they never took. Harper, meanwhile, had started to crave something different. She talked about wanting a life that felt meaningful in ways money couldn't buy. She wanted stability, connection, a family. Lincoln could still remember the night it all came to a head. They had been sitting in their apartment, the skyline twinkling outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, when Harper told him she couldn't keep living like this. Her voice had been steady, but her eyes brimmed with tears. "I don't need the penthouse or the trips or the endless work dinners," she had said. "I just need you." "But you're not here anymore, Lincoln." "Not really." He had tried to argue, to explain that everything he was doing was for them, but Harper had only shaken her head, her expression full of a sadness he hadn't known how to fix. A week later she had moved out. Lincoln had told himself it was for the best. They wanted different things, and it was better to let her go than keep holding her back. But sitting in the car now, with Ruth beside him and Harper's face fresh in his mind, he couldn't help but question that narrative. Had it really been for the best? Or had he simply been too consumed by his ambition to fight for the woman he loved? The car pulled to a stop in front of Ruth's building, snapping Lincoln out of his thoughts. She turned to him, her smile bright but expectant. "Are you coming up?" Lincoln hesitated, then shook his head. "I've got some work to finish up tonight." "Rain check?" Ruth's smile faltered, but she nodded, leaning in to kiss his cheek. "Don't work too hard. You're allowed to enjoy your success, you know." He waited until she disappeared into the building before telling the driver to head back to his penthouse. The silence of the car was deafening, and Lincoln's mind kept looping back to Harper, her tired eyes and the undeniable swell of her belly. Who was the father? Was she happy? Was she okay? The questions haunted him all the way home. The next morning, Lincoln sat in his office, a sleek, minimalist space high above the city. He stared at the report on his desk, the words swimming in front of him. For the first time in years, he couldn't focus. His mind kept drifting to Harper, to the way she had looked at him last night, calm, professional, but distant. It was as though she had built a wall between them, and Lincoln wasn't sure he could blame her. Ruth called him around noon, her voice cheerful as she chatted about their trip. He responded in kind, but his heart wasn't in it. She noticed. "Are you sure you're okay?" she asked. "You sound distracted." "I'm fine," he said too quickly. "Just a lot on my plate right now." There was a pause, then Ruth's voice turned curious. "Is this about last night? About that waitress? You seemed weird after she came to the table." Lincoln's grip tightened on the phone. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," Ruth said, her tone light but probing. "You just got quiet. And she did seem kind of familiar. Do you know her?" He hesitated, the weight of the truth pressing down on him. "She's someone I used to know. A long time ago." Ruth didn't push, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Lincoln could feel it in her voice, in the way she lingered before saying goodbye. He ended the call and leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. The memories kept coming, unbidden and relentless. He saw Harper on their wedding day, radiant and full of hope. He saw her curled up on their couch, a book in her lap, laughing at something he had said. He saw her walking away from him, her shoulders straight but her steps heavy. And now he had seen her again, carrying a new life and wearing the exhaustion of someone who had been through more than he could imagine. The questions in his mind only grew louder, more insistent. He couldn't ignore them, couldn't push them aside like he had so many other things. For the first time in years, Lincoln felt a pull toward the past, a need to understand what had gone wrong, and whether it was too late to make things right. Lincoln's thoughts swirled endlessly in the days following the dinner at Amaretto. He found himself replaying every detail, every expression on Harper's face. The calm way she had handled herself, the flicker of something, pain maybe, when their eyes met. Most of all, he couldn't stop thinking about her pregnancy. The questions were like a persistent hum in the back of his mind, growing louder the more he tried to push them aside. At work, Lincoln struggled to concentrate. Meetings felt like background noise, and even the congratulatory messages about the product launch failed to bring him any real satisfaction. His assistant, Claire, noticed his distraction but didn't comment, instead keeping her usual efficiency intact. Lincoln appreciated her professionalism but knew he wasn't fooling anyone. By the end of the week, the weight of his thoughts was too much to bear. He needed answers. He started with a simple call to an old mutual friend, Lily, who had remained close to Harper after the divorce. Lincoln hadn't spoken to her in years, their conversations having dwindled after his and Harper's separation. Still, when he reached out, Lily didn't sound surprised. "I was wondering when I'd hear from you," she said, her tone both amused and cautious. Lincoln hesitated. "Did she mention seeing me?" "No," Lily said slowly. "But I know she's been working at Amaretto. You must have run into her." "I did," Lincoln admitted. He hesitated again before asking. "She's pregnant. Is she okay?" There was a pause on the other end of the line, and Lincoln could picture Lily weighing her words carefully. "She's fine," she said finally. "But it hasn't been easy for her. Harper left her job a while ago to start her own interior design business. Things were going well at first, but you know how unpredictable that kind of work can be. She ended up taking the job at Amaretto to make ends meet." Lincoln felt a pang of guilt. Harper had always been ambitious, but her ambitions had been different from his. While he chased financial success and prestige, she had sought fulfillment and creativity. Hearing that she had struggled brought back a wave of memories he wasn't ready for. "And the baby?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "It's hers," Lily said, her tone softening. "The father isn't in the picture. She's planning to raise the baby on her own." The words hit Lincoln harder than he expected. He tried to imagine Harper navigating pregnancy alone while working long hours and managing everything else. The image made his chest tighten. "She never reached out," Lincoln said, almost to himself. "She wouldn't," Lily replied. "Harper's not the type to ask for help, especially from you. She's proud, Lincoln. And after everything that happened between you two, well, she's moved on. Or at least, she's trying to." The conversation ended shortly after, but Lily's words lingered. Lincoln couldn't shake the guilt that followed him everywhere, guilt for the way their marriage had ended, for the choices he had made, and now for the life Harper was living without him. At home, Lincoln tried to distract himself with work, but his focus kept slipping. Ruth noticed. She had been patient for the first few days, chalking up his distance to post-launch stress, but her frustration finally boiled over during dinner at his penthouse. "You're barely listening to me," Ruth said, setting her wine glass down with a little too much force. "I've been talking about our trip for 10 minutes, and you haven't said a word." Lincoln looked up, startled. I'm sorry. My mind's just been elsewhere. Yeah, I've noticed, Ruth said, her voice sharp. She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. This is about her, isn't it? The waitress. Harper. Lincoln tensed. Ruth, it's not what you think. Oh, isn't it? She snapped. Because ever since that night, you've been distracted, distant. I'm not stupid, Lincoln. I can tell when something, or someone, is taking up space in your head. Lincoln rubbed a hand over his face, feeling the weight of the conversation pressing down on him. It's complicated. That's not an answer, Ruth shot back. Are you still in love with her? The question hung in the air, heavy and unspoken for far too long. Lincoln didn't know how to respond. Was he still in love with Harper? He wasn't sure if love was the right word for what he was feeling, but the emotions stirred up by seeing her again were undeniable. I don't know, he said finally, his voice quiet. Ruth let out a bitter laugh. At least you're honest. She stood, grabbing her purse and slinging it over her shoulder. You need to figure out what you want, Lincoln. And until you do, don't call me. With that, she walked out, leaving Lincoln alone in the silence of his penthouse. He stared at the door for a long time, the echo of her words replaying in his mind. He should have felt angry, or at least defensive, but all he felt was exhaustion. Ruth wasn't wrong. He did need to figure out what he wanted. The problem was, he wasn't sure if he could. The next day, Lincoln found himself scrolling through his phone, looking at pictures from the early days of his relationship with Harper. There was one from their first trip together, her smile bright and carefree as they stood on a windy cliffside. Another from a holiday party, her cheeks flushed from the cold as she laughed at something just out of frame. Each photo brought back a flood of memories, both good and bad, and Lincoln couldn't help but wonder how things had gone so wrong. He thought about what Lily had said, about Harper's pride and her determination to handle things on her own. It was one of the things he had always admired about her, but now it felt like a barrier he didn't know how to break through. He wanted to help, to be there for her in some way, but he wasn't sure if she would even let him. Lincoln spent the rest of the weekend in a haze, torn between the life he had built and the one he had left behind. The questions about Harper, about her pregnancy, and about his own feelings refused to leave him alone. By Sunday night, he made a decision. He couldn't keep living in this limbo, stuck between the past and the present. If he wanted answers, if he wanted any chance at closure, or maybe something more, he needed to talk to Harper. Directly. No more speculation, no more second-hand information. Just the truth, whatever it might be. As he sat in his office the next morning, Lincoln picked up his phone and stared at the screen for a long moment. Then, taking a deep breath, he dialed the number for Amaretto. Good afternoon, the hostess answered. How can I help you? I'd like to speak to Harper, Lincoln said, his voice steady despite the nerves twisting in his stomach. Harper Whitmore. There was a pause. I'm sorry, but we don't typically interrupt our staff during shifts. Can I take a message? Lincoln hesitated, then said, Tell her it's Lincoln. Lincoln Davis. And that I'd like to see her. The hostess promised to pass the message along, and as Lincoln hung up, he felt the first flicker of something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. It was tentative, fragile, but it was there. And for the first time in a long time, he was ready to follow it. The hum of the city filled the air as Lincoln stepped out of the car in front of Amaretto, his tailored suit brushing against the cool evening breeze. It was the same restaurant, the same glowing sign, but this time he was alone. His excuse for returning was thin, some fabricated business meeting he'd casually mentioned to Claire. But the truth was, he had no meeting. He just couldn't shake the need to see Harper again. Inside, the atmosphere was just as he remembered it, elegant and alive with soft murmurs of conversation and the clink of silverware. He spotted her almost immediately, moving between tables with a practiced ease, her black blouse and apron blending into the dimly lit backdrop of polished wood and white tablecloths. Lincoln sat at a small corner table, deliberately choosing a spot where he wouldn't be immediately noticeable. When Harper finally approached, her expression shifted from neutral professionalism to something guarded, her movements slowing as she came to stand beside him. "Lincoln," she said evenly, her tone carefully devoid of emotion. "I didn't expect to see you again so soon." He glanced at the empty seat across from him, then back at her. "I was hoping we could talk." Her lips pressed into a thin line, her hesitation clear. "I'm working." "I know," he said quickly, lowering his voice. "But just a few minutes. Please." Harper's eyes flicked around the room, scanning for her manager or another server who might intervene. She sighed softly, setting her tray on the edge of the table. "Fine. But make it quick." Lincoln gestured to the seat across from him, but Harper shook her head. "I can't sit." "What do you want?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice even further. "I wanted to see how you're doing. After everything. I know I don't have the right to ask, but I just needed to know." Harper crossed her arms, her posture rigid. "Why now, Lincoln? It's been years. You've moved on. So have I." "I saw you, Harper," he said, his voice quieter but no less intense. "That night. You were pregnant, working here, and I can't stop thinking about it. I need to understand." Her eyes softened for just a moment before she caught herself, her professional mask slipping back into place. "I'm fine. I don't need your pity." "It's not pity," he said firmly. "It's concern. I'm not trying to make this harder for you, I swear. But you looked tired. Stressed. And if there's any way I can help. She cut him off, a hint of bitterness creeping into her voice. "Lincoln, I don't need you swooping in to save me. I've been managing just fine without you." "I know you have," he said gently. "But you don't have to do everything alone." Harper's jaw tightened, but she didn't immediately reply. Instead, she glanced toward the kitchen, her body tense as though she were debating whether to walk away. Finally, she exhaled, her shoulders sagging ever so slightly. "Fine. 10 minutes. Meet me out back when I finish my shift." Lincoln nodded, his chest tightening with relief. He watched as she walked away, her posture straight and her pace brisk, and he wondered if he had just pushed too far. The alley behind the restaurant was quieter than Lincoln had expected, the muffled sounds of the city fading into the background. Harper emerged a few minutes later, her apron gone and her hair falling loose around her shoulders. She looked different in the soft glow of the streetlights, less guarded, more herself. For a moment, Lincoln was transported back to a time when seeing her like this was a daily occurrence. She leaned against the brick wall, crossing her arms as she faced him. "Talk." He hesitated, searching for the right words. "I heard about the interior design business. From Lily." Harper's eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't interrupt. "I also heard that it's been challenging," he continued, "and that you're doing all of this on your own. I can't imagine how hard that must be." "It's not easy," she admitted after a moment, her voice softer now. "But it's mine. After the divorce, I needed something that felt like mine. So, I left the corporate world and started taking on small projects. Word spread, and for a while, it was great. But then the market shifted, and clients started drying up." She glanced down, her fingers brushing against her stomach in an unconscious gesture. "When I found out I was pregnant, I had to pick up shifts here to cover the bills. It's not glamorous, but it pays." Lincoln's gaze dropped to her hand, resting protectively over her belly. "And the baby's father?" Harper's lips pressed into a tight line. "He's not in the picture. It wasn't serious, and when I told him, he made it clear he didn't want to be involved. So, it's just me." The words hit Lincoln harder than he expected. Harper had always been strong, but the thought of her facing something as monumental as single parenthood alone made his chest ache. "You shouldn't have to do this by yourself," he said quietly. "Harper, I know I messed up. I know I let you down, and I can't undo that. But if there's anything I can do now, anything at all, I want to help." She looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "Why, Lincoln? Why do you care all of a sudden?" "Because I never stopped caring," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I just didn't know how to show it. And now, I don't want to make the same mistakes again." Harper's eyes softened, and for the first time that evening, she let her guard drop completely. "I don't know if I can trust you, Lincoln. Not after everything." "You don't have to decide that now," he said quickly. "But let me help, even if it's just as a friend. I can connect you with people who can grow your business. Make sure you don't have to rely on this place to get by. No strings attached." She hesitated, her hands still resting protectively over her stomach. Finally, she nodded, just once. "Okay. But only because it's for the baby." Lincoln smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that he hadn't felt in years. For the baby. As they stood there, the city's quiet hum surrounding them, Lincoln felt something shift. It wasn't reconciliation, not yet, but it was a start. And for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was finally moving in the right direction. Lincoln couldn't stop thinking about the conversation with Harper. Her words echoed in his mind as he sat in his penthouse that night, the city's lights twinkling outside the massive windows. The place felt colder than usual, the silence almost oppressive. For years he had measured his worth by the size of his accomplishments, the deals closed, the markets conquered, the wealth accumulated. But sitting there, surrounded by all the trappings of his success, he felt strangely hollow. Harper had always valued the things he had neglected: family, connection, balance. Back then, he had dismissed her priorities as naive, believing that success required sacrifice. Now, he wasn't so sure. The image of her standing in that alley, tired but unbroken, stayed with him. She was fighting for something bigger than herself, something real. And what was he fighting for? Another zero on his bank balance? Another headline in the business section? For the first time in years, Lincoln began to wonder if he'd been chasing the wrong things all along. The next morning, his routine felt off. His usual coffee tasted bitter, his meetings dragged on longer than they should have, and even the congratulatory messages from his board about the product launch felt hollow. His assistant, Claire, noticed. "You okay, Mr. Davis?" she asked cautiously as she placed a file on his desk. "You've been distracted lately." Lincoln looked up, startled by the observation. "I'm fine, Claire. Just a lot on my mind." She hesitated before nodding and leaving the room, but her expression made it clear she didn't believe him. Lincoln didn't blame her. He didn't believe himself either. That evening, Ruth showed up unannounced at his penthouse, her stilettos clicking against the marble floor as she walked in. She was dressed impeccably, as always, her makeup flawless, her smile bright. But there was an edge to her voice as she greeted him. "I've been giving you space," she began, her tone casual but calculated. "But I think it's time we talked." Lincoln set his glass of whiskey down on the coffee table, bracing himself. "About what?" "About whatever's going on with you," Ruth said, sitting gracefully on the couch across from him. "You've been distant, distracted. And I think I know why." He stayed silent, waiting for her to continue. "It's Harper, isn't it?" she said, her eyes narrowing. "Ever since that night at the restaurant, you've been acting differently. Don't try to deny it." Lincoln sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm not going to deny it. I saw her, and it brought back a lot. She's going through a tough time, and I want to help." Ruth's laugh was sharp and cold. "Help? Lincoln, she's your ex-wife. Whatever she's going through is not your responsibility. You're with me now." "I know that," he said, his voice steady but firm. "But I can't just ignore it. She's someone I cared about, someone I still care about in some way." Ruth's expression darkened. "So what? You're going to play savior? Throw money at her and feel better about yourself?" "It's not about money," he said, standing now, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "It's about doing the right thing. Something I didn't do enough of when we were together." Ruth rose to her feet as well, her heels bringing her almost level with him. "And what about us, Lincoln? Are you just going to throw this away because your ex suddenly reappeared?" Lincoln met her gaze, the weight of the moment settling over him. "I don't think this has been working for a while, Ruth. We've been going through the motions, but there's no real connection. Not like there should be." Her face froze, her carefully composed mask cracking for just a moment before she recovered. "I see," she said, her voice icy. "So that's it then?" He nodded, his heart heavy but certain. "I think it's best for both of us." Ruth grabbed her purse, her movements sharp and deliberate. "You'll regret this," she said as she walked toward the door. "You always do." The door slammed behind her, leaving Lincoln alone in the vast, empty space of his penthouse. He exhaled slowly, the tension in his chest easing even as a pang of guilt settled in. He didn't regret his decision, but that didn't make it any easier. Over the next few weeks, Lincoln found himself focusing more on Harper and less on the demands of his company. He reached out to a few trusted contacts in the design industry, discreetly putting in good words for her and sending potential clients her way. He also arranged for her to meet with a financial advisor, ensuring her business had the support it needed to thrive. He didn't tell Harper about any of it. She was proud, and he knew she wouldn't accept the help if she thought it was charity. Instead, he let the opportunities come to her organically, hoping she would seize them without suspicion. Their interactions at the restaurant became more frequent but remained brief. Harper was polite but guarded, her walls firmly in place. Lincoln respected her boundaries, but he also made it clear that he was there for her if she ever needed anything. One evening, as they sat in the back alley after her shift, Harper finally broke the silence. "I don't know why you're doing all this, Lincoln. Helping me, I mean. You don't owe me anything." He looked at her, his expression earnest. "I'm not doing it because I owe you. I'm doing it because I care. And because I want to." She studied him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face for any sign of ulterior motives. Finally, she nodded, a small, hesitant smile playing on her lips. "Thank you?" Lincoln felt a warmth spread through him, the kind he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just about helping Harper, it was about rebuilding something he had lost a long time ago. Trust. Connection. Meaning. As the weeks turned into months, Harper's business began to pick up, and her stress seemed to ease. She still worked at the restaurant part-time, but her focus shifted back to her passion, and Lincoln could see the difference it made. She looked lighter, happier, even as her pregnancy progressed. Lincoln didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. Helping Harper wasn't just about making up for the past, it was about building something better, something real. And he was ready to see where it would take them. Lincoln stepped into the cozy boutique, the scent of fresh paint and polished wood greeting him as he crossed the threshold. The space was alive with color, fabric swatches draped over chairs, mood boards pinned to walls, and plants tucked into every corner. Harper's new design studio was small but brimming with personality, just like her. "Hey," she greeted him, glancing up from her desk where she was arranging tile samples. Her smile was cautious but genuine, a far cry from the guarded expression she'd worn when they first reconnected. "What brings you by?" "I was in the neighborhood," Lincoln replied, his tone casual, though he made the detour specifically to check in. "Wanted to see how things are going." She nodded, gesturing for him to sit. "Busy, which is a good problem to have. The new clients you mentioned came through, and they've been keeping me on my toes." Lincoln settled into a chair, glancing around the room. "It's amazing to see this place come together. I knew you'd make it work." Harper tilted her head, a hint of skepticism in her smile. "I'm still figuring things out. It's not exactly smooth sailing, but it's mine, and that makes it worth it." He admired her resilience, the quiet determination that had always been her strength. "If there's anything else you need, don't hesitate to ask." "I mean it." "I know," she said softly, meeting his gaze. "And I appreciate it. I really do." Their conversations had grown easier over the weeks, the walls between them gradually coming down. Lincoln had taken care to tread lightly, respecting her independence while finding small ways to support her. He never pushed, never asked for more than she was willing to give, and that patience seemed to be paying off. They began spending more time together, not intentionally at first but in the natural rhythm of their shared connections. He'd stop by the studio occasionally, offering feedback on her projects, or just lending an ear when she needed to vent. Sometimes they'd grab a quick coffee, their conversations light and easy, filled with moments of laughter that reminded them both of simpler times. One evening, as they walked through a nearby park after closing up her studio, Lincoln broke the comfortable silence. "I've been thinking a lot about the past." Harper glanced at him, her expression curious but wary. "What about it?" "About us. About the ways I let you down," he admitted, his voice tinged with regret. "I was so focused on building my career that I lost sight of what really mattered. I took you for granted, and I'm sorry." She slowed her steps, her gaze fixed on the path ahead. "You don't have to apologize, Lincoln. We both made mistakes." "I know," he said, stopping to face her. "But I should have listened to you more. You wanted something real, something I couldn't see at the time. I realize now how much I missed because I was too stubborn to stop and appreciate what we had." Harper looked at him, her eyes searching his face. "People change," she said finally, her tone thoughtful. "And I think you've changed too." Her words were simple, but they held a weight that struck Lincoln deeply. He nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I'm trying. And I want you to know that whatever happens, I'm here for you. For you and the baby." Harper's lips quirked into a smile, softer this time. "Thank you, Lincoln. That means a lot." As they continued walking, their conversation shifted to lighter topics, but the exchange stayed with both of them, a subtle but significant step forward. Inspired by Harper's passion for helping local artisans and small businesses, Lincoln began exploring ways he could use his own influence to make a difference. He reached out to his contacts in the city, proposing a series of initiatives aimed at supporting grassroots entrepreneurship. His company launched a grant program for emerging designers and hosted community events that showcased local talent. Harper was hesitant at first when he mentioned the projects to her, wary of being a focus of his efforts. "This isn't about me, is it?" she asked one evening as they sat in her studio, reviewing a proposal he'd drafted. "It's inspired by you," he clarified. "But it's not just about you. There's so much potential in this community, and I want to help foster that. You reminded me how important it is to invest in people, not just profits." She studied him for a long moment, her expression softening. "That's really amazing, Lincoln. I'm proud of you." The words hit him harder than he expected, filling him with a quiet warmth. He hadn't realized how much her opinion still mattered to him until now. "Thank you," he said simply. As the months passed, Harper's trust in Lincoln grew, and with it, a new kind of friendship blossomed between them. It wasn't the heady, all-consuming connection they'd shared in their early years, but something steadier, built on mutual respect and understanding. Lincoln cherished it, knowing how fragile it was and determined not to squander it. One afternoon, as they worked side by side in her studio, he helping to move furniture while she arranged a new display, Harper paused and looked at him. "You've really changed," she said, her tone a mix of surprise and admiration. Lincoln set down the chair he'd been carrying, brushing his hands off. "I had to. Losing you was a wake-up call I didn't know I needed." Harper smiled, a warmth in her expression that hadn't been there before. "Maybe some good came out of it after all." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world seemed to quiet around them. It wasn't a declaration, wasn't even a promise, but it was something, an acknowledgement of the progress they'd made and the possibilities that lay ahead. As they returned to their tasks, the air between them felt lighter, the bridge they'd been building growing stronger with every step they took together. Neither of them knew what the future held, but for the first time in years, they both felt ready to face it, side by side. It was an ordinary afternoon when Lincoln's phone buzzed on his desk. He glanced at the screen, expecting another message from his assistant or a client, but instead, it was a call from an unfamiliar number. Something about it made his chest tighten. "Hello?" he answered, his voice cautious. "Lincoln, it's Lily," came the hurried reply. "Harper's been taken to the hospital. She went into labor early." She's asking for you. Lincoln's breath caught. Is she okay? What happened? She's stable, but they're monitoring her closely. The baby's coming sooner than expected, and she's scared. She didn't know who else to call. Lincoln was already on his feet, grabbing his keys and heading for the door. Which hospital? Lily told him, and he didn't waste another second. He called for his driver but couldn't wait, opting to drive himself. The city blurred past him, his focus narrowing to a single thought: Harper. When he arrived at the hospital, the antiseptic smell and muted chaos hit him all at once. He approached the front desk, his heart pounding in his chest. Harper Whitmore, he said, his voice strained. Where is she? The nurse directed him to the maternity ward, and he rushed down the sterile hallway, his polished shoes echoing off the floor. When he reached her room, he paused for a moment to collect himself before stepping inside. Harper was lying in the hospital bed, her face pale and damp with sweat. Her hair was a mess, sticking to her forehead, but her eyes were sharp, filled with a mixture of fear and determination. She looked up when he entered, and relief softened her expression. You came, she said, her voice weak but steady. Of course I did, he said, crossing the room to stand by her side. I'm here. She reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly as another contraction gripped her. Lincoln felt a pang of helplessness watching her endure the pain, her body trembling with the effort. The baby's early, she said once the contraction passed, her voice trembling. They said it's not ideal, but we'll be okay, right? You will be, Lincoln said, his voice firm. You're the strongest person I know, Harper. You've got this. Her lips quirked into a faint smile, but her grip on his hand didn't loosen. For the first time, Lincoln saw her vulnerability laid bare, and it shook something loose in him. She wasn't just the woman he had once loved, she was a fighter, a survivor, and now, a soon-to-be mother. The hours dragged on, each contraction bringing Harper closer to delivery. Lincoln stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, whispering words of encouragement, and silently marveling at her strength. Nurses came and went, offering updates and adjusting monitors, but Lincoln barely noticed them. His entire world had shrunk to the woman in the bed and the life they were about to bring into the world. When the time finally came, the room transformed into a flurry of activity. Doctors and nurses worked quickly, their movements precise and efficient. Lincoln stood by Harper's side, his hand clasping hers as she pushed through the pain, her cries tearing through the sterile air. You're doing amazing, he told her, his voice steady despite the whirlwind around them. I'm right here. Harper didn't let go of his hand, even as her grip tightened to the point of pain. Lincoln welcomed it, wanting to share even a fraction of the burden she was carrying. Watching her fight for their baby, her baby, Lincoln felt something deep inside him shift. When the baby's first cry filled the room, time seemed to stop. The doctor held up a tiny, wriggling form, announcing, "It's a boy." Harper collapsed back against the bed, her face etched with exhaustion and relief. Lincoln glanced at her, his heart swelling with pride and something far deeper. When the nurse placed the baby in her arms, tears streamed down Harper's cheeks as she gazed at her son for the first time. "He's perfect," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Lincoln leaned over, his gaze fixed on the tiny bundle in her arms. The baby's face was scrunched up, his cries softening into whimpers as Harper held him close. "He is," Lincoln agreed, his throat tight. For a while, they simply existed in the moment, the chaos of the delivery room fading into the background. When the nurses finally took the baby to clean and swaddle him, Lincoln pulled a chair closer to Harper's bed, his hand resting lightly on hers. "You were incredible," he said softly. "I've never seen anything like that." Harper let out a tired laugh, her eyes fluttering closed for a moment. "I didn't think I could do it. Not without you." Her words hung in the air, filling Lincoln with a mix of gratitude and longing. He took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. "Harper," he began, his voice low, "there's something I need to say." She opened her eyes, her gaze meeting his. "What is it?" He hesitated for a moment before continuing. Seeing you like this, watching you bring a new life into the world, it's made me realize how much I've been missing. You're incredible, Harper. You've always been incredible. And I think I've always loved you." Her eyes widened slightly, her lips parting in surprise. "I know I don't deserve another chance," he went on, his voice thick with emotion. "But I want you to know that I'm here. For you, for the baby, for whatever you need. I'll be whatever you want me to be, friend, co-parent, anything. The choice is yours." Harper stared at him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, Lincoln feared he'd said too much, that he'd pushed her away. But then her hand tightened around his, and a faint smile curved her lips. "Lincoln," she said softly, "you've changed. I can see it. And I think we can figure this out. Together." Relief and hope surged through him, his chest tightening with the weight of her words. He nodded, unable to speak, and simply held her hand as they sat in silence. The nurse returned with the baby, placing him gently in Harper's arms. Lincoln leaned closer, gazing at the tiny face that represented a new beginning, a second chance for all of them. In that moment, he knew he'd do whatever it took to be the man they both deserved. The next few weeks passed in a blur of sleepless nights and quiet moments filled with new life. Lincoln visited Harper and the baby, whom she named Henry, almost every day. He marveled at how quickly the tiny boy became the center of their world, how easily his presence made the cracks in their past feel smaller, more distant. Every coo, every stretch of his little arms seemed to stitch them together in ways Lincoln hadn't thought possible. Harper, too, seemed to be softening. Her initial wariness around Lincoln gave way to something gentler, more trusting. They had shared some difficult conversations since that night in the hospital, conversations that forced them to confront the mistakes of their past. But in every exchange, Lincoln saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes, a cautious willingness to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back to each other. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Lincoln sat on Harper's couch with Henry cradled in his arms. The baby had just fallen asleep, his tiny hand curled around Lincoln's finger, and the sight of him filled Lincoln with a quiet sense of awe. "You're a natural," Harper said softly, sitting down beside him with a cup of tea. Lincoln glanced at her, his expression warm. "I had a good teacher." She smiled, her eyes lingering on him for a moment longer than usual. "Thank you for being here. For everything." "You don't have to thank me," he replied. "This is where I want to be." Harper looked down at her tea, her fingers tracing the rim of the cup. "I've been thinking a lot about us," she admitted. "About the things we went through and the people we've become." "And?" Lincoln asked, his voice steady but tinged with anticipation. She met his gaze, her expression earnest. "I see how much you've changed, Lincoln. You've become someone who listens, who cares about more than just work. I think I want to see where this can go. If we can build something new." Lincoln's heart swelled with relief and joy, but he kept his response measured, not wanting to overwhelm her. "I'd like that. More than anything." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the weight of their shared history giving way to the possibilities of the future. Over the following months, Lincoln began to make changes in his life. He had spent years pouring every ounce of himself into Davis Industries, convinced that his worth was tied to his success. But now, with Henry's tiny fingers gripping his heart and Harper's cautious smiles filling his days, he saw things differently. At a board meeting one morning, Lincoln announced his decision to step back from the day-to-day operations of the company. He named his most trusted lieutenant as interim CEO, explaining that he wanted to focus on his personal life and pursue projects that aligned with his newfound values. His colleagues were stunned, but Lincoln felt nothing but clarity. For the first time in years, he wasn't running on autopilot. He was choosing to live intentionally, to prioritize what truly mattered. Lincoln's transition wasn't just professional, it was personal, too. He moved out of his sprawling penthouse and into a more modest home near Harper's neighborhood, making it easier to spend time with her and Henry. His days became filled with small joys, late-night feedings, afternoons in the park, and quiet evenings sharing stories with Harper while Henry dozed between them. Harper, in turn, began to trust him more deeply. She saw how committed he was, not just to Henry but to their fragile, growing relationship. They weren't rushing anything. They were rebuilding step by step, brick by careful brick. One crisp autumn afternoon, they hosted a small gathering at Harper's home to celebrate Henry's first 3 months. It wasn't extravagant, just a few close friends, a simple spread of food, and plenty of laughter filling the cozy space. Lily was there, of course, along with a few of Harper's clients who had become friends. Lincoln's assistant, Claire, even stopped by, bringing a handmade blanket for Henry that earned her a rare, genuine smile from Harper. Lincoln stood in the corner of the living room, watching the scene unfold. Harper was laughing with Lily near the kitchen, her face lit with happiness. Henry was being fussed over by Claire and one of Harper's clients, his tiny hands waving in the air. The room felt alive with warmth and love, and Lincoln realized he hadn't felt this content in years. Harper caught his eye across the room and smiled, a soft, knowing look that sent warmth flooding through him. He crossed the room to stand beside her, leaning against the counter as she finished her conversation with Lily. "This is nice," he said, his voice low. "It is," Harper agreed, glancing around the room. "It feels right." Lincoln nodded, his gaze settling on her. "Thank you for letting me be part of this. Of your life again." Harper turned to him fully, her expression serious but tender. "You've earned it, Lincoln. You've shown me that you're not the same man you were before. And I'm glad you're here." Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of forgiveness, of hope. Lincoln reached for her hand, his touch light but firm. "I'll keep earning it every day." She squeezed his hand, her smile widening. "I know you will." As the evening wound down and the guests began to leave, Lincoln found himself alone in the living room, cradling a drowsy Henry. Harper appeared beside him, her presence warm and steady. "Looks like someone's ready for bed," she said, brushing a hand over Henry's soft hair. "Yeah," Lincoln replied, his voice soft. "He had a big day." Harper sat beside him, leaning her head against his shoulder. They stayed like that for a while, the room quiet except for Henry's soft breaths. "I think we're going to be okay," Harper murmured, her voice filled with quiet conviction. Lincoln turned his head to kiss the top of her hair, his heart full. "I know we are." And in that moment, surrounded by love and second chances, Lincoln knew he had finally found what he'd been searching for all along. Not success, not wealth, but a life filled with purpose, connection, and the people who mattered most. Lincoln's journey wasn't just about rekindling a lost love, it was about rediscovering what truly mattered. Through forgiveness, growth, and the courage to take a leap of faith, he and Harper found their way back to each other, not as the people they once were, but as stronger, wiser versions of themselves. Together they built a life defined not by material success but by love, family, and the promise of second chances. As their story reminds us, it's never too late to change, to make amends, and to prioritize what truly matters. Whether it's repairing a relationship, chasing a dream, or simply being present for the people we care about, every step forward is an opportunity to create a new beginning. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. What did you think about Lincoln and Harper's journey? Let us know in the comments. And if you're ready for more heartwarming tales of love, resilience, and redemption, stay tuned. Here at Heart Ventures we've got plenty more stories coming your way. See you in the next video.